Hey everyone, welcome to Advocacy Answered. This is Mike Kondratik, and today we're going to talk about the process of getting started building an advocacy program from scratch. Or maybe you've decided that you're going to revamp an existing program. So either way, you've given yourself the freedom to start with this blank canvas, like this blank slide that is behind me. And that is a process that is both invigorating and intimidating. How can you make sure that you're investing your resources the right way? And how can you be sure that you're giving your organization the best opportunity to generate the results that you want? And so I think at this point that comes down to being able to answer four specific questions. And the first of those four questions is the most important. What is your strategy? Now, most every organization I've worked with, I've given them the same advice for their overarching strategy, which is to invest in building relationships with both advocates as well as, of course, the decision makers who you're looking to influence. Now, most organizations, they use an issue-focused strategy instead of a relationship-focused strategy. What does that mean? Well, it means that they typically take their issue agenda and they'll plot out the key decision points on those issues, right? It's usually key votes along the path of getting that issue enacted into law. Okay. But what happens with that kind of a strategy is that the communications quickly become all about the needs of the organization. And those communications tend to come out only when advocates need to do something to help the organization. And so the communication environment that advocates live in, the communication environment that we all live in today is crazy. On a daily basis, we're bombarded with tens of thousands of messages, of brand images. And so communications that are all about the needs of another organization are going to tend to get filtered to the bottom. They're going to tend to be ignored. So having a relationship-focused strategy is a good reminder to make sure that all of your communications are focused on the needs of your audience. Another way to look at it is if you looked at an organization's issue agenda, particularly over the long term, 3 years, 5 years, certainly 10 years, there's going to be lots of issues on it, right? The issues are going to tend to come and go. But the legislators who make decisions about those issues, once they're elected, they tend to stay in office, right? More often than not, they're going to be the ones making decisions on those issues, even if you're looking out over a decade, okay? And advocates, if you treat them the right way, if you engage them on their terms, they too tend to remain engaged with your organization. So it always made good sense to me to invest advocacy resources in really the only thing in the advocacy world that acts like an asset, right? So it's over time this care and feeding of relationships, right? Those relationships build and grow in value and ultimately put your organization in a position to be successful regardless of the issues on which you choose to engage. Okay, so this is the first question, the most important. What is your strategy? And it's important because the answer is going to then color your approach to the remaining three questions. So the first of those remaining three, what is your planning horizon, specifically your communications planning horizon? And again, for most organizations I work with, I recommend that their horizon for their communications be focused on the everyday instead of the legislative emergencies and key legislative decision points. And the reason why I make this suggestion is because the decision points, even if you just looked over a year on any issue, are really few and far between, right? And if you're looking to build a relationship, that relationship needs to be built with care and effort, and most importantly, consistency, right? You have to be able to think about, on an everyday basis, what needs to be done to grow a relationship with an advocate or to grow a relationship with a legislator, okay? It's that consistent engagement over time that is going to earn your audience's attention, okay? And ultimately, remember, the surest way to build trust is to be communicating when you don't need something, okay? If you can do that, then when you do need something, your audiences are going to be there for you. Okay, so third question, how are we going to use technology? Now, most organizations start to answer this question by thinking about channel strategy, right? Where we need to be on social media, the email program, mobile, right? How are we going to use analytics? Are we going to incorporate AI, right? All of these are important questions that need to get answered. But remember, your time is limited, your resources are limited. And so your investments in advocacy technology need to be focused on the channels that are going to most help build relationships with advocates and legislators. Remember, for all the technological advancements we've made in the advocacy world over the last several years, the most important, the most impactful form of communication with legislators and with staff remains in-person meetings with constituents. Every survey of legislators and staff says the same thing. Every Congressional Management Foundation study says the same thing. In-person meetings are the most important way to be able to shape legislators' opinions and change their minds. Okay? And so it shouldn't be lost on you that this is an offline communication, right? So you need to think about technology in a way that helps you bridge online activity to generating these offline communications, these offline meetings that give you the best chance to succeed. Okay, and so then the final question is, how are you going to invest your budget, right? The great thing about the technological advancements we've made in advocacy over the last several years is that it's given organizations of any type and of any size the opportunity to build a successful advocacy program. Okay, there are three kind of buckets that you should think about in terms of how you apportion your budget. The first of those three buckets is recruitment, right? So how are you going to go about finding the advocates who are interested in your issue and are likely to be engaged on it? Okay, so that's number one. The second bucket, how are you going to build relationships with those advocates, and how are you going to motivate those advocates to want to build relationships with legislators or with decision makers? And then the third bucket is the actual process of creating the relationships between your advocates and legislators. Okay, so if you think about those three buckets and you apportion your budget accordingly, you're going to have every angle covered. You're going to give your organization the best opportunity to be successful. Okay, so these are the four key questions that you should start your planning process with. Now, if you have questions, or certainly if you think I've missed something or gotten something wrong, please reach out to me. Let me know. You can find me on Twitter at Advocacy Answer, no ED on that Twitter handle. Or you can shoot me an email. It's advocacyanswered@gmail.com. As always, thank you so much for your time and for your attention.